wonderful conversation with Sally Eppstein. And she is a local artist, an amazing lady, and just words cannot describe. Phil Mosier, by the way, that's me. And I've been teaching here at Perimeter College, actually since we were DeKalb College, way back in the dinosaur era. And in that way, or in that regard, we have seen a lot of great artists over time, whether it be in theater or photography or art, visual art, all of it. And I have to say that Sally, the lady that we'll be talking to and you'll be hearing and I'll interview, is the most incredible we've ever had.
You're sweet.
Was true. And I'll tell you why. And we're going to go into the Q&As and you'll kind of get it all from her as we continue. But we met, what was it, 4 years ago, roughly? Am I thinking right?
Probably a little bit longer, about
5?
5 years ago.
Right.
No, about 6 or 7 years ago.
So when Brookhaven became a city?
Pretty much when Brookhaven became a city, yes.
So Sally is a resident of Brookhaven, and when Brookhaven became a city, like many cities, it sort of faced a lot of complexities like growing pains and identity all at the same time. And I'll let Sally talk, and I don't mean to go on, but I work freelance or part-time for a local newspaper. And so I covered an event, several actually, that included Sally. And man, without even knowing she was an artist, I was completely attracted to everything she was saying and how she felt and how she thought about the world around her and us and our environment and how important it is and how sometimes, even though developers and cities and all these things sort of constitute change and development and of course the reality that is, she and great people like her are equally and simultaneously aware of nature and nature's environment and how we have to balance our relationship with it or we lose it. And in particular, and I don't want to fast forward, but a lot of Sally's most recent work is about endangered insects.
Yes. Well, insects and how we need more native plants, and we lose more native plants and we lose our insects. And so a lot of times when we build new houses, we're not planting what was originally native there. So I love the idea of there's a new movement of native plants and people putting back the native plants that will attract the insects or be the host plants for the insects. And many birds' diets and baby birds are all based on caterpillars, which will eventually turn into moths and butterflies. So it's really important that we do this, and especially as we're losing more and more of our green space in Atlanta.
It is. It's right. It's a dual-edged sword.
A double-edged, yes.
Yeah.
Yes, or dual,
yeah.
perfect
No,
too.
it is. No, because we got to have both.
Absolutely.
We got to have a balance. So, okay. So that's kind of, again, fast forwarding to now because Sally is in an art show with us at Georgia State on the Decatur campus. But more importantly, or to kind of start at the beginning, Sally, tell everybody about your life, your history, your developing into an artist 20, 30 years ago and how that's got you where you are today.
Okay. Let's just start. I was born.
That's a good one. I like that. Well, of course you were.
I was born in Augusta, Georgia. Actually, at Fort Gordon. My father was. My family was military, and my family retired in Augusta. So from there, I grew up there. So my rest of my family all travel all over the world, but I lived in Augusta, but kind of left me a little bit of wanderlust, and I've loved to wander around as soon as I could. I was always interested in art. I have paintings from when I was very young and a lot of sketchbooks from when I was young. So I always felt like that was something what I leaned towards. Then I went to school in New York City for jewelry design at the Fashion Institute of Technology. And I did that because I thought that might be, I always felt more of a painter though. So then I came back home to Augusta College, which is now Augusta State University, and it was amazing because they had a really great program. They had started endorsing the arts, and they had not a fellowship, but anyway, but they started investing a lot of money in arts and bringing a lot of art teachers from around the country. And I felt very blessed because I had one painting teacher that was wonderful. He's sort of a, if he happens to see this, I want to say something very nice. He was very opinionated, and he definitely, but a lot of people didn't like him, so his classes were really small. But we had a few people in our classes, and it was just wonderful. It almost felt like it was what a graduate class would feel like. And he, instead of like so much teaching us painting, he taught us more of the philosophy of painting. He was very old school. So I felt like that was a very nice blessing. Then he left, and we had another professor that used to run the Oxford University in England drawing department for many years, and he was wonderful too, but he was really popular, and suddenly the classes were just packed. So it sort of lost that romance. So anyway, so I graduated from Augusta College, and Augusta State University.
And then moved to Atlanta
Then after that, I moved to Atlanta, and I taught for art for 10 years. And
so before the Heron.
Before the Heron.
So where was your first teaching?
I taught in a little after-school program in Augusta called the Art Factory, which is no longer there.
Oh.
But they based it on the Atlanta Contemporary, the Nexus program they had, which was really fun. And then I taught at public schools in Augusta, and then I moved to Atlanta, and I taught in Lilburn, a little Catholic school in Lilburn, Georgia.
No way! How cute
for 5
is
years.
that?
Yeah.
Little people?
Kindergarten all the way up to middle school.
Oh, wow.
So that was interesting. It was fun.
Yeah. And you did that for several
5
years?
5 years. And then I got married, and I kind of paused on my own art a little bit to raise children. And now that I'm married into a blended family.
Oh, I see.
So there was a total of 4.
Oh my God.
So then from there, I was inspired by all the public art that the Beltline was doing, and
that was in its infancy.
It was in its infancy, and I did not have any experience doing any sculpture. So at the last minute, I just got an inspiration to do a totem pole. So I reached out to the Blue Heron Nature Preserve and asked them if they would want a totem pole. I was gonna just do it pro bono to kind of, because I knew it was gonna be teaching myself how to do it. So my husband has a workshop, and I had always seen his tools, but I never had used them. So I built a totem pole for the Blue Heron, and from there I learned that basically sculpture is just like big jewelry. So I was used to a lot of the tools. I was used to the sanding, all the same practicality that I already went to college for. So that was pretty interesting.
And if I'm not mistaken, totem poles relate to nature. And that's sort of the...
They do. So this one was just, it had a blue heron, and it was very simple. It was for the community garden. But I've done other ones that...
Is it still there?
It's still there.
That's what I thought.
It's in the community garden.
Yeah,
right there on Roswell Road.
And then tell us a little bit about your tenure at the Heron.
So when I was there, we had the dedication, which was on Earth Day. And from there, Nancy Jones, who was the founder of the Blue Heron, she asked me if I would be interested in volunteering as the art director. So I thought, well, this is something new and different, so sure. So I volunteered there for 4 years, and she was leaving, and I thought, well, I think I'm going to leave with her. But then they decided to create a budget for the arts, including a salary for me, or a small, salary, and so I stayed on. So, and I was there for 6 years, and I just left this past year, but it was a wonderful experience, and the best thing about it was I got to meet a lot of great people, and I saw you a lot. You came to a lot of my events.
That place is amazing.
It is amazing.
It is. No, it's like, it's heaven in a city.
It is.
It is.
It is. So the Blue Heron Nature Preserve is located in Buckhead. It's on Roswell Road, and it's 30 acres, and it started with 7 acres, and it's grown up to 30 acres. And they have art, education, and conservation as their 3 key things. So it was wonderful. And Atlanta Audubon Society is there, which is really nice.
And the school, right?
The school's not there any longer.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yep.
Okay.
And also the Amphibian Foundation is there.
Okay.
So it was great. So we're surrounded by a lot of people that love nature, which was really, and I've learned a ton working there.
Oh, I'll bet.
Yes.
I'll bet. And is that what led you to where we are now? What, that connection and those?
I would say the moths that I've started painting was 100% because of the Blue Heron, because Nancy Jones, who is a dear friend of mine, I went to visit her. She now lives in Florida, and she showed me a book of a photographer that would make a light tent in the woods, I guess it's sort of the jungle, and start taking photographs of moths. And so we talked about maybe mimicking that and doing that. And we have a little bit of property up in North Georgia, and I'd noticed there were so many more moths up in North Georgia compared to Atlanta, Georgia. So that just sparked some ideas, and she did the light independently, and I did some research and found out that black lights, moths really love black lights. So I bought
the posters.
Yes, like the posters
kids,
from
man,
the 70s.
that's so cool.
Yeah,
Really?
they do.
I
They
didn't
love
know
it.
that.
They do.
That's
so
interesting.
So from there, I had the black lights, and I also used a regular light to attract the moths. And the moths up in North Georgia, there were so many compared to Atlanta, Georgia. So that was pretty interesting. And there are also different moths. But moths are, it depends on the host plant, and there's there's many more native plants up there compared there is down here.
Down here.
Yes.
We're a hodgepodge.
Yes.
And because of that, we attract less reproduction of moths?
Yes.
Typically?
Yes.
That's true?
Yes.
In Metro Atlanta?
Because we don't have as much,
We do,
Atlanta's,
right?
there's many beautiful pockets in Atlanta, and there's a lot of older houses. And
like the Heron.
Like the Heron.
Right.
And then
Decatur,
even Ponce and
old
Leon.
established neighborhoods.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely.
And Brookhaven.
And Brookhaven.
That was your
Brookhaven.
concern.
Yes.
Right.
So I met Phil when he was a photographer. They had just cut down about 5 or 7 acres of really big old trees right by my house.
Literally across the street from Sally's house.
And I was just devastated to see these gigantic, old, beautiful, healthy trees just devastated. They just basically did a clear cut to build a new neighborhood. And so I became a kind of a tree advocate, and I was pretty pumped up. So Phil came, we had a tree meeting at my house, and Phil came with a writer from the Brookhaven Reporter and took some pictures. So that's when I met Phil.
Yeah, that's right. And just pause her for just a half a second, because this is no joke, right? I was in her home. She welcomed not just me, but 10, 15 people that day.
There was quite a few.
Yeah, it was great. And there was room for everybody. But me, I'm kind of the curious type. So, and of course I was polite and made pictures of everybody, because that was why I was there. But, I could, even just sitting where I was and just kind of looking around and making the portraits of the people that were having the discussion about this change in Brookhaven, I saw your spirit everywhere. It was hanging. I almost got hit. I remember it was some weird thing with like something. And then I'm like, oh my God, she made that. And then I got to look. There's paintings everywhere, and you collect. you make, you process, you're always developing, you're like the quintessential artist. Alive. That we can really talk about process and evolution and how you grow and develop. So maybe if you would, just for a second, because Don brought it up earlier, and it's a great, and I was going to think about it and ask, but he kind of knows a little bit more about it than even I, because, I think when great artists make great art, the process is important for the artist more than it is for the viewer, and only the educated mind, or, am I getting somewhere? And so, to me, and maybe I'd love to hear, but maybe the process is intended so that the viewer sees the depth of the subject. So if you could tell everybody about that process and kind of how that's evolved these last 5 or so years, and how that translates so beautifully to your moth paintings.
Oh, well, thank you. So I have moth paintings that are done multiple different ways. I have some that are on just regular canvas that are painted with acrylic paint, and so those are pretty normal. And then I have some moth paintings that are painted with acrylic paint on Mylar, and from there I would cut out the paintings and then suspend it in epoxy resin and have different layers of epoxy resin with different medium in each layer, and sometimes I'd add a little bit of paint or add different materials, a little metal. I used to do that with my feathers, and I painted feathers. I'm still working with feathers some, but I would use feathers, paint them on Mylar, and then suspend them also in the resin. And I did that for quite a few years. But then I decided to do it with the moths also. So, but I'm pausing here because the last batch that I did with like that, it wasn't quite my favorite.
But
so
they're not.
They're hanging up.
Okay, okay.
But then I painted over them and I added more paint to them, and because I added just a little bit of glitter, and it almost was a little bit too much glitter. Sometimes it was a new element for me. And once you make a mistake with epoxy resin, it's
there.
It's like a paperweight. You can't really change it. So I have a little bit of learning curve with that. So, and then these right here, these were a little different. I was gonna paint some moths. Phil called me up. We had set up the show for spring, and we were going to have the art for 2020, and we were going to have the art opening.
And it's still there.
It's still there. So, but we could not have the art opening, and Phil said, well, if you want to paint some more moths or add some more artwork, then please do that. So I was out of town. I was up at the little mountain place, and I realized I did not bring my proper work. So all I had was the black boards, and I decided to just use black and white. And what was surprising is, compared to my other moths that are bright colored and have a lot of color and a little glitter, these are very simple and muted and
beautiful.
Oh, thank you.
No, they have depth in the flatness, and I know that sounds weird, but they do. They look like moths sitting on that wood. Right.
Well, it's funny that you said that. I was saying this earlier today. So, speaking of moths, I have a great story. We're up in the North Georgia, and I walked outside one day, and the side of the whole wall of the house was like thousands of white moths, and they were just laying there, or not. I mean, they were attached to the wall, and I would walk close to them, and one or two would start to fly away. It was sort of like reverse snow. Mm-hmm. And my son had a little friend over that was, he was used to the city. He wasn't used to nature. and he walked out, and more moths started coming out.
Cool.
And he just was like, "Oh, this is just way too much nature. I can't handle this."
Where's
and
my phone?
and I was like the polar opposite, where I was like, "Oh my gosh, this is. I mean, just it fills my soul." It was so exciting.
They're there for you.
Oh, so I haven't seen them like that ever again. So, but it was a wonderful experience.
They're your ally.
I would like to do an art installation
You're their ally.
based on that.
You're their ally.
I'm trying.
No,
So-
that's really it. No, that is absolutely it. That is so okay, so a good question maybe moving forward is, where do you see your art going? Like, is there, I know you're always your heart and your soul's environmental and realism, right?
That's true.
Right?
It is.
So where's Sally going next? Is there?
Eventually, I would like to start to kind of get away from realism a little bit. And I was talking to your colleague, Don Dugan, who's over there.
My hero.
And thank you, Don, for organizing everything today.
Oh my God, everything. He's in charge of the art galleries for all of the college.
So one thing I would like to do is, I think so many of the moths have such wonderful patterns, and a lot of them have faces sort of embedded in their, I guess, the camouflage of them. And Don was telling me that one of his friends would just do sort of an abstract of the moths. And I thought, oh my gosh, that's so funny, because I was thinking that's where I would like to go, is sort of like just to blow it up, to make it more abstract. And I'm trying to slowly get away from being so realistic, but
Boy, you're so good at it.
But I still will probably do it. I mean, I'll still continue some.
Now, is this one piece? That's kind of how this one.
No, this
or
is.
Those are
Those
five
are in
different.
it. They are. But for this purposes,
you kind of like it. I think it looks. I think it's one piece.
Okay. It could be.
Right? You know what I mean? 'Cause they're like dominoes. They've got their own number.
Oh, that's interesting. Yes.
You know,
I like it.
I like, the black and white
Yes,
ones,
yes, yes.
That's what I thought when I was like, that's the first thing. I was like, wow. Like, yeah. They're their own number. That's incredible. No, it's cool.
Well, thank you.
No, they're cool. They're really cool. So, maybe if you'd like, you want to take some questions from the audience?
We've got a comment first.
Okay, that'd be great. We'd love that.
Never thought I'd be so fascinated by moths. Used to just think ick. was there a growth in your love of moths, or did you always like the bugs growing up?
Well, it's really funny, because it's funny how some things you remember as a child, and sometimes things that you don't. And I had painted some lunar moths. I painted a couple of them. I had a little show in my home, and my childhood friend, her name's Georgia Ann, and she said, "Sally, do you remember all the Luna moths that we used to see all the time?" And it was funny, because I don't remember that, but she did, and I remember more the tadpoles and the frogs and things like that. But anyway, so no, I do remember as a child that I would walk outside, and if there was a door light, you got bombarded with moths, and I don't feel like that's the case anymore. And I feel like and even driving down the road, you should always get so many insects hitting your car.
And not so much anymore.
Not at all. So, no, I've always sort of been an observer of nature and just the smaller elements. And I had a professor once, he says, you always focus in on the smallest things, and that's
been your mode?
It's been 30 years since he told me that, and that's definitely been my mode.
Yeah, right. You're sticking with it. Yeah. No, I get it.
Yeah.
No, I get it.
And the other question we've already got so far is, the sizes of your pieces seem to vary considerably.
Yes.
What is your decision process as to whether the work is small or is it large? And do you have a preference of working really big or really small?
I like both. These are small because they were easy to travel with.
Really? No, that's not it.
It is true.
Really?
Yes, I was gonna.
Boy, they fit.
I was
You know what I mean?
I was going out of town, And I thought, when I'm out of town for this week, I'm going to paint the whole time I'm there. So it was something that was easy to pack up, and I painted all the surfaces, and that was it. So
that really is an astute question, because if you haven't seen the show on Decatur campus, she makes this same type of painting, and typically those are mostly in color. Huge! I mean, like 5 feet tall. Like they bombard you with life and energy, like they're gonna fly, like they're gonna grab me and eat me for lunch.
Well, that's interesting. There's a Mothman in New Jersey.
Nuh-uh.
There's a folklore in New Jersey. A friend of mine, or no, West Virginia. A friend of mine, I was talking to her about moths, and she said that there's a museum for a Mothman, which I thought was hysterical. So I Googled it. I was tempted to buy a T-shirt, but I didn't do it.
You should actually collaborate or something.
Maybe. Well, they're focused on he's sort of like the Bigfoot.
It's his own little thing.
He's his own little thing.
I see.
So I love doing big, and I would love to do even bigger. So I think the most, it's like 6 feet tall, maybe 4 feet wide, but I love the idea of being big and working with larger brushes and things like that.
So art is equally or more the component of your paintings than the subject, or is that, the duality of your subject, and how like here's how it went in Decatur when we put your show together. The students that helped us were excited for you and happy and all that stuff, but a couple of them were like, "Hey, Mosier, right? Why does she, right? Feathers and nature and moths and stuff. It's like, right?" So
as I said, I was focusing on family for a while, and I was trying to think of what I would like to start painting. And I found a large hawk feather. I thought, well, I'll paint this. And once I painted that, then I thought, well, this is kind of interesting, and I liked it. And obviously all my artwork is pretty simplistic, and
she says that, but it's not. It's very elaborate.
Well, it's singular. It's very simple.
Saying.
It's not incredibly.
But it's elegant.
Well, thank you.
You're welcome.
So, but then I started learning about feathers, and you think you look around and there's not a bazillion feathers everywhere. And then come to find out, the more I learned, there was a treaty back in the early, over 100 years ago. Women would wear huge hats with just tons of plumes of feathers, and they would wear, I was reading more about this lately, they would even wear like the heads of hummingbirds as earrings.
What?
Yes.
Real birds?
Yes.
No.
Yes.
That's crazy.
So it was a huge thing. So they would kill, just in Florida alone, each year 5 million birds.
What?
Just for women's fashion. So they created a treaty back in 1918, and it's called the Migration Bird Treaty Act, and to stop the sale of feathers and birds. And they worked with Canada and Mexico, and eventually they included Russia and also Japan. So just to protect birds. So back in the 70s, one thing they did, they upgraded it, and they said that if any companies harm birds, then the companies have to be liable and pay a fine. So like when the BP spill down in Florida, so they had to pay $100 million to help with, to get the environment back and save the birds. But that being said, it's illegal to own feathers. It's illegal to take feathers out of nature. You can borrow them briefly and paint them or photograph them, but you're supposed to put them back.
I didn't know that.
It's illegal to have bird eggs or bird's nest or even birds. So
if they're in the wild, right?
If they're in the wild,
domestic,
not domestic. So chicken feathers,
right? That's no big deal. Or
no
peacocks.
or peacocks. So domesticated birds, or yes, or
Right.
parrots,
I get
or
it.
macaws, or
Well-
But the interesting thing is, so a group of women in Boston, they were so taken back by all these birds being killed for fashion that they started. It was like one of the very first conservation groups that turned into the Audubon Society.
Oh, that's cool.
Yes.
That is
So they're the ones that were the spearheaded for saving them. So the more I learned about feathers and I learned all the history, and then it was a challenge to get the feathers, and I got permission from the, I guess, the federal government to be able to borrow feathers from the Chattahoochee
Oh, for your art.
for my art. So
And here's why I asked that, and it may seem a little bit sort of sketchy, and it is, but it's kind of interesting. Our students, right, and that's why we have galleries on campus, and we want to engage our students, and we want to teach them about art, but more than that, obviously. So our art students on Decatur campus were the ones that helped Sally and I put together her show and hang it. And the reason I asked her that question like that was because without the words, which she did add some and then came back and finished, like her statement and some of the descriptions of the moths and the birds, all that, she would include like a paragraph or two about it. And so what Sally is about, I think, more than, not all artists or by any means, but a lot that we know and have worked with and exhibited over time, Sally is really about understanding the interpretation of art, which is more than just, oh, that's a nice painting or picture or, whatever. It's like, wait a minute. Why does she spend a month making a painting of a moth, and one I've never seen before? And then it's like, that's why.
well, it makes it more interesting.
It does.
It does. And it makes it more interesting to think that if you see a beautiful moth, and you would like to have that moth around a little bit more, what plants could you plant to attract that moth? Or a butterfly, or, anything like that. So
that's right.
Right.
So you're equally an environmentalist as much as an artist?
I would say I was an artist first. Well, no, I would say no. That's not true. I would
Right,
say internally.
You seem to have a.
I do. Internally, I would say yes. Internally, I would say that I've always been affected when I've seen nature being taken down.
Yeah, me too. That's
So
right.
when I was a child, we would go through some woods and go over a creek and go through the woods and find a beautiful little pond. And one day they tore all those trees down where the little pond was and built an apartment complex around it. And it just took something away from me. So I don't know.
No, I agree.
It was a little bit internal. But
Yeah,
at the same time, you have to be realistic.
No,
And you have to, like right now, if you have more density in just one spot, you can also create more green space.
Yeah. No,
So
that's right.
the only thing that I'm just going to be a little bit put on my little environmental thing. The only thing that bugs me now is they want to
Bugs her. Did you get that? Bugs her. Did you get that?
is that they build buildings out to the sidewalk, and then you see that they plant these little small oak trees, and there's nowhere for the canopy of that oak tree to be. So
Or the root system, which is even more complicated.
oh, it's just as big as a
ridiculous.
canopy. So I feel like they're trying to
They
make
end up having to cut it down when it's about 8 years, 10 years old.
right.
Because it can't sustain. It's
Right.
going to keep.
I mean, you're gonna have to start
And
branches will start going into the apartments.
Right, and the roots are going to cause the sidewalk and the building and all the sewer stuff. All those roots are looking for water.
Right.
No, it's crazy.
But
So-
I would love to see more city planning, and the city of Brookhaven, they're doing an okay job. They're doing a pretty good job. They're trying.
No, it's hard.
It is hard.
No,
And Atlanta's a boom town right now.
no, it
So-
is. No, it totally is. And no, I don't have any answers for that. But again, the idea of it and what's so incredible and so important, and especially in our academic context, is her art is educational. And I cannot say, I hope I'm clear. Like, she wants people that engage with her to know not just what she knows, but to understand the world we live in and its complexities. So do we have any more questions?
We do. It's a little bit of a different topic, I apologize, and I've been asked if you could repeat it so it's heard on mic.
Okay.
You mentioned resin and glitter, but have you ever worked with 3D materials, like string, fabric, etc.?
I've worked a little bit with fabrics. I have not worked with string. But I did not, when I was doing the feathers the first time, I was not doing proper health. I was not doing things very smart. I wasn't wearing a mask. I wasn't wearing gloves. I was being very sloppy. And I would get it on me, and I started getting a little sick from it. And I got a big chemical burn on myself. So when I did the moths with the resin, I was really, really careful the second time, or I'd been doing it over the years. So, but I'm at a point where I'd rather work with materials that are a little bit better for the environment and also better for my health. So strings, that's very interesting. But I've worked with a lot of wire with jewelry, but not string. But I like fabric. A friend of mine, she collects fabrics, and they're so wonderful. There's so much depth to them.
Oh, weaving is incredible.
It is. It's inspirational.
Yeah. Oh, I agree. So do you do much jewelry? Like,
I started taking some jewelry classes just to sort of, get the dust off my jewelry, but not as much as I used to. But I'm going to be doing a show coming pretty soon for a Christmas holiday, and I just bought some enamel powders, and I'm excited. I'm going to start doing some jewelry for that, and
oh, cool.
And playing with some enamels.
Oh, neat.
My problem is I love to explore things, so I just like to keep trying new things. So
enamels, that's where you can kind of see through it? Am I thinking right?
Well, it can be opaque or translucent. Mm-hmm. It can be different things. So.
Any other questions from any of our viewers, listeners?
No, not at the moment.
All right, that sounds good.
So when you feel like we're wrapping up?
Well, I don't know. Did you kind of how did you want to wrap it up? I know you kind of want to tell everybody, how important it is to think about and be aware of what we do and how that impacts not just the world, but our world.
Well, the way I would like to wrap this up is to say, please think about the birds and the insects. And I would like you to think about your yard, if you have a yard, to think about maybe leaving some leaves there, because Luna moths loves to wrap up and live in leaves and live in cocoons. So maybe have like a tiny little section of your yard that's a little messy. I would like to say, if you see butterflies or moths that you're interested in, which I've already said before, please consider planting plants that will attract those. And think about, there's so many wonderful resources here in Atlanta. There's the Atlanta Native Plant Society, there's the Blue Heron, the Audubon Society, and the Amphibian Foundation, and they all teach classes and say just get more involved in nature and get outside and enjoy and start looking at all the small stuff and smell the roses and
keep your distance and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
But of course, being outside is really healthy for
absolutely all of us. Absolutely,
there's no doubt.
So, but I just love exploring and finding and learning more. So, and I want to say thank you to you for a wonderful show out at the Decatur campus, and thanks to Don and thanks to Aaron and to James. So, and thanks for anybody that tuned in.
Oh yeah, no, that's absolutely right. And tell us, your show's going to remain up through the rest of the year, the academic year then? And
I believe it's December 17th.
Right?
December 17th.
And that's right. And we apologize for not having a reception for you, because I know that's a big deal, and we would have loved to have brought out the Blue Heron people and all of your friends and family, but next time.
Next time.
It's not over.
It's never
'Cause
over.
That's right. And again, that educational component that you just automatically bring is just such a joy.
Well-
and a wealth of, visual and literal information.
And the Georgia State University at the Decatur campus, they have a wonderful native plant.
We do. You
There.
certainly plug it.
So it's a beautiful, beautiful walking trail. And there's a lot of, and I think maybe once or twice a year, they have a native plant sale.
At least. Yeah,
yes.
that's right. Yeah, there's
So
a really neat
there-
guy that started it. I guess he's been there forever. George somebody. I can't remember his last
I don't
name.
know.
Anyway, I think that's right. And he was really super nice. And the plant sale, they only grow and sell native plants. For
that reason.
For those very
Right.
beings.
Yes.
That we don't even think about how much we rely on.
We do rely on them because we rely on them for all the caterpillars, for all the birds and all the butterflies and the moths that pollinate all our food and flowers. So there you go. It's that simple.
Well, you guys, it's been a wonderful and amazing talk, and I'll tell you, Sally is a wonderful and amazing lady.